This is dangerous knowledge. I need you to understand that before we go any further. What you are about to hear was never designed for comfort, wellness trends, or casual curiosity. It was hidden in the high plateaus of Tibet, guarded by monks who understood something modern medicine is only beginning to admit. The human immune system can be manually overridden, not boosted by supplements, not patched by drugs, commanded. The technique is called Tummo, the inner fire, and for centuries it was considered too powerful, too destabilizing, too uncontrollable for ordinary people. You were not supposed to know this, because once you understand it, you stop being biologically passive. And that is dangerous to systems built on dependence. You have been taught that your body reacts to viruses, to cold, to stress, to age. That immunity is something that fails randomly and must be rescued from the outside. That belief is the real prison. The Tibetan masters knew something that sounds impossible until you feel it happen inside your own chest. Heat is not just temperature. It is a signal. Fire is not metaphor. It is a switch. When you generate internal heat through breath alone, you are not warming muscles. You are issuing orders to the deepest layers of your nervous and immune systems. That is why this was restricted. That is why it was wrapped in ritual, myth, and fear. Because once a human realizes they can consciously trigger immune activation, inflammation control, and stress immunity at will, they stop being predictable. I am not speaking to you as a motivational guide. I am speaking as someone who has studied the science behind what monks discovered through survival. You are about to learn why men sat half naked in Himalayan snow and dried frozen sheets with their bodies alone, not as a trick, but as proof. Proof that cold, illness, and weakness are negotiable states. Proof that immunity is not automatic, it is programmable. But here is the warning. You will not hear elsewhere. This is not safe if approached casually. Tummo amplifies whatever is already unstable inside you. That is why it was forbidden. And that is exactly why you need to understand it correctly. From the beginning, you feel it already, even if you don't have the language for it. The constant fatigue that doesn't match your effort. The way stress lingers in your body long after the threat is gone. The cold that sinks into you faster than it used to. The inflammation you were told is normal. This is not bad luck. This is a nervous system stuck in defense mode and an immune system that has forgotten how to stand down and how to surge on command. You are not weak. You are misregulated. And the longer this state persists, the more your body confuses safety with danger, turning its own defenses into chronic exhaustion. Here is the uncomfortable truth most people never hear. A suppressed immune system and an overactive immune system are the same problem wearing different masks. Both are signs that the autonomic nervous system has lost leadership. Your body no longer knows when to mobilize and when to recover. Stress hormones stay elevated. Inflammatory signals never fully shut off. Immune cells fire randomly instead of strategically. This is why you catch colds easily, but also feel inflamed all the time. This is why anxiety and immunity travel together. This is why modern humans are always almost sick or almost burned out. The system is stuck halfway on. Tummo exists because extreme environments do not allow that mistake. In the Himalayas, misregulation equals death. The monks who developed this method were not seeking enlightenment first. They were solving a survival problem. How do you maintain immune vigilance without destroying yourself with stress? How do you create heat without food, fire, or movement? How do you command recovery while surrounded by cold that should shut you down? The answer was not endurance. It was control. Breath became the lever that forced the nervous system to obey conscious intent. If you do nothing, your immune system will continue reacting instead of responding. It will burn energy inefficiently, misfire under pressure, and collapse when you need it most. That is the stake. This is not about becoming superhuman. This is about reclaiming baseline authority over your own biology before degeneration becomes your default setting. Tummo is not optional knowledge in a hostile environment. And make no mistake, modern life is hostile to the human nervous system. Now we cross the line from myth into mechanism, because this is where most people either wake up or retreat. Tummo works because it hijacks a biological emergency pathway that evolution designed for survival under extreme threat. When you manipulate breath in a specific way, you deliberately increase carbon dioxide tolerance while simultaneously activating the sympathetic nervous system, not weakly, but sharply and intentionally. This creates a controlled internal stress signal, the kind your body usually only experiences during cold exposure or danger. But here is the forbidden part. Instead of panic, you add precision. The brain interprets this signal as a command, not a crisis. Brown adipose tissue ignites like a hidden furnace. Mitochondria accelerate. Immune cells receive a mobilization order, and inflammatory cytokines are brought under command rather than allowed to roam freely. Heat rises along the spine, not because of mysticism, but because spinal nerve pathways and vascular dilation respond to the breath-induced signal cascade. At the same time, something counterintuitive happens. After this forced sympathetic surge, the vagus nerve rebounds aggressively. This rebound is where immune intelligence is restored. Inflammation markers drop. Stress hormones fall below baseline. Immune cells become more responsive, not more chaotic. Think of it like training an army. Constant alarms make soldiers exhausted and sloppy. But short, intense drills, followed by deep recovery, create elite response units. Tummo is that drill. Breath becomes the instructor. This is why studies on similar mechanisms showed trained individuals resisting endotoxins, suppressing inflammatory storms, and maintaining immune clarity under conditions that would normally trigger collapse. The monks did not know the terms cytokines or autonomic balance, but they knew the outcome. The body listens when the breath speaks the right language. This is why visualization was never optional. When you imagine inner fire, you are not fantasizing. You are engaging cortical control over subcortical systems, aligning perception with physiology. The brain cannot distinguish imagined heat from generated heat when the breath pattern matches the signal. That is the final lock. Breath primes the body. Attention directs the response. Together, they flip the switch from passive immunity to active command. This is not relaxation breathing. This is not calming. This is deliberate biological provocation, followed by enforced recovery. And once you understand that, you see why this knowledge was never meant to be casual. The Tibetan monks did not hide Tummo because it was mystical. They hid it because it was precise. Precision in the wrong hands becomes chaos. So they wrapped a biological technology inside symbolism, ritual, vows, and fear, creating a psychological filter that only disciplined minds could pass through. Inner fire rising up the central channel was not poetry. It was a training interface. The spine became the axis of control, because that is where autonomic signaling, vascular response, and thermal regulation intersect. Visualizing flame at the navel was not spiritual decoration. It was a way to anchor attention to the enteric nervous system and deep abdominal pressure zones that amplify heat production and immune signaling. What looks like religion is actually containment. They understood something modern neuroscience confirms. The mind will not follow instructions it does not respect. So they built reverence around the method, silence before practice, moral discipline, long apprenticeships. These were not about virtue. They were about nervous system stability. An undisciplined mind triggers stress without recovery. A disciplined mind can enter stress and exit cleanly. That is the difference between immune strengthening and immune collapse. This is why Tummo was never taught as a technique alone. It was taught as a framework of control. Without it, the fire burns the house down. The rituals also slowed transmission. You could not skim this knowledge. You could not misuse it casually. The chants regulated breathing tempo. The posture locked the spine and diaphragm into efficient signaling pathways. The imagery synchronized cortical and limbic systems, so the body received a single coherent command instead of conflicting signals. Strip away the mythology, and what remains is early neuroimmunology encoded in culture. They were not avoiding science. They were protecting it from untrained operators. This is the part that should make you uneasy. Because now you are receiving the key without the monastery, which means responsibility shifts to you. There is no elder watching, no ritual to slow you down, only understanding. And understanding is the only thing that keeps this from becoming dangerous. The inner fire does not care about your intentions. It responds to accuracy. That is why the protocol matters. And that is why the next part will feel uncomfortably specific. This is where the romantic stories end and the real work begins. Tummo is not performed, it is engineered, and every small detail you ignore will change the biological outcome. You begin seated, spine vertical, not relaxed, but stacked, because spinal alignment determines how effectively autonomic signals travel. Slouching diffuses the command. You breathe through the nose only. Mouth breathing breaks pressure control and weakens the internal signal. Inhale deep into the lower abdomen, not the chest, expanding the belly as if inflating a sealed chamber. This is not calming breath. This is pressurization. At the top of the inhale, you hold briefly and gently, engage the pelvic floor and lower abdomen, creating an internal lock. This is where heat is born. You then exhale slowly and forcefully through the nose, drawing the abdomen inward as if compressing that chamber, squeezing heat upward rather than letting it dissipate. The rhythm is deliberate. Inhale slightly shorter than the exhale, with a brief hold only after the inhale, never after the exhale. That hold is the ignition point. During this phase, your attention is non-negotiable. You visualize heat forming below the navel, dense and heavy, not flames yet, more like molten metal. With each cycle, you feel it intensify, and on the exhale, you guide it upward along the spine. This is not imagination layered on top of breath. It is breath directing neural firing patterns. If your attention wanders, the effect collapses into fatigue instead of power. Precision keeps the nervous system coherent. You start with short sessions, 5 to 7 minutes. No more. Longer is not better. Intensity is the variable, not duration. You stop before shaking becomes uncontrolled. Mild tremor is acceptable. Dizziness is not. You practice in a neutral environment, not cold, not hot. Because the goal is internal generation, not external stimulation. After the final cycle, you do nothing. No breathing technique. No control. You sit and allow the rebound. This recovery phase is where immune recalibration happens. Skip it, and you only train stress. Respect it, and you train command. This protocol was never meant to be optimized for comfort. It was meant to be optimized for signal clarity. If you follow it precisely, you will feel warmth that does not behave like normal heat. It spreads. It lingers. It changes your relationship to discomfort. And that is the sign that the switch has been flipped. The first thing you need to understand about the timeline is that Tummo does not work gradually in the way supplements or fitness routines do. It works in thresholds. Cross the threshold, and the system reorganizes. Miss it, and nothing changes. After the very first correct session, the most common effect is not euphoria. It is clarity. Your body feels quieter, but more alert, as if background noise has been muted. Peripheral warmth appears in the hands, feet, and spine, and cold feels less invasive. That is the immune system shifting from reactive scanning to controlled readiness. Sleep that night often deepens, not longer, but denser. This is the nervous system completing the rebound phase. By the end of the first 7 days, assuming you respect recovery and do not overtrain, measurable changes begin. Resting body temperature stabilizes. Cold exposure becomes tolerable instead of threatening. Inflammatory sensations decrease, even if you cannot yet explain why. Stress hits faster, but leaves faster. This is the vagus nerve learning that it is allowed to shut the alarm down completely. Immune cells respond with sharper discrimination. You are not boosted. You are regulated. That distinction matters more than people realize. At the 30-day mark, the shift becomes undeniable. Energy availability increases without stimulants. Illnesses shorten or fail to take hold. Your tolerance for discomfort expands beyond physical sensation into emotional stress. This is because immune signaling and emotional regulation share the same pathways. You have been training both without separating them. Blood markers in controlled settings show reduced baseline inflammation and improved stress hormone recovery curves in individuals using similar protocols. The body is no longer guessing. It knows the drill. At 90 days, the identity changes. Cold no longer defines the environment. Stress no longer defines the day. Your immune system behaves like a trained organism, not a reactive one. You are not invincible, but you are no longer fragile. And once that state is reached, it is easier to maintain than to achieve. This is why monks did not rush. They understood that transformation is not about intensity alone, but about respecting biological timing. Ignore the timeline, and the system rebels. Honor it, and the system adapts permanently. Before you mistake mastery for bravado, you need to hear this clearly. Tummo does not reward ego, it punishes it. This technique does not care how motivated you are, how spiritual you feel, or how badly you want results. It responds only to precision and restraint. Push too hard, skip recovery, chase sensation, and you do not become stronger. You become inflamed, anxious, depleted. This is why ancient teachers warned that inner fire can consume the practitioner. They were not being poetic. Chronic sympathetic activation, without disciplined rebound, erodes immunity instead of strengthening it. The same switch that trains resilience can burn the circuitry if flipped recklessly. And yet, avoiding this knowledge out of fear is a slower form of collapse. Because the modern world will stress your nervous system whether you train it or not. Pathogens will test you. Cold will test you. Pressure will test you. The question is whether those tests remain chaotic, or whether you meet them with an immune system that has rehearsed adversity under your command. Tummo is not about comfort. It is about sovereignty, about proving to your own biology that you, not circumstance, decide when to mobilize and when to recover. So here's the challenge, and it is not symbolic. Practice with discipline. Short sessions. Full recovery. No shortcuts. No performance. No comparison. You are not trying to feel powerful. You're teaching your immune system to listen. If you respect the protocol, respect the timeline, and respect the danger, you will earn something modern. Life rarely gives back once it is lost. Internal authority. And once you have it, cold becomes information, stress becomes fuel, and immunity becomes a skill instead of a mystery. That was the real secret of Tummo all along.